there certainly heard the government's position. A case not only put to us in Britain then, but also to Hong Kong, where the programme is also being broadcast. So let's now go to the Hong Kong studio, where David Walter is there with a group of British subjects, citizens of the Crown Colony, who've been listening to what the Foreign Secretary has just been saying. David, I think it would be, if you could, useful, first of all, to hear from our guests with you why they believe they need that right to come here, and then perhaps the answers to some of the things that the Foreign Secretary has been saying.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I wonder if I can ask you all first a question, and I think from the expressions on your faces there may not be much doubt about the answer to this question. How many people here, on a show of hands, feel that Hong Kong people with British passports ought to have the right of entry to Britain? I see a show of hands. That seems to be pretty unanimous. Now, Joyce Wong, I wonder if I can come to you first. You're a solicitor, and I know that you feel very strongly about this question. What have you got to say to the British people about this question to persuade them of the justice of your case?
Well, I feel, listening to Sir Geoffrey today, he has reinforced the feeling that I have, and I'm sure the feeling that the people in Hong Kong have, of the tremendous sense of betrayal that this British government is conveying to the people here. I think it's a tremendous injustice to the British people. He says that he feels that this the changes in the law will not pass through Parliament. He doesn't even consider putting forward any alternative legislation to this Nationality Act, listening to him today. And as for the suggestion that special segments of society here in Hong Kong, who are all 3.2 million of them are BDTC holders, should be allowed favour from the British government of their rights of abode in Hong Kong, in the UK. It's morally repugnant.
Thank you very much indeed. Jack Edwards, can I come to you? And yes. You have lived here for 20 years, but you've also lived in Britain. You surely understand the problems in Britain.
Yes.
What have you got to say to this question?
I've got to say this. I hold here the flag, which was put up in Hong Kong, August the 18th, 1945, by men who risked their lives for freedom, liberty, and democracy. My remarks out to the servicemen. This flag was flown here before the British fleet arrived by very brave men. This flag represents, supposedly, justice, liberty. Neville Chamberlain, when he came back, just like Sir Geoffrey Howe, waved a piece of paper to us in 1939. He said, I hold here a sacred document. That was given by a dictator. We were marching in uniform in no time. I say to Sir Geoffrey Howe, you will go down in history like Neville Chamberlain. And I warn Mrs. Thatcher also that somebody one day will say, depart, I say, in the name of God, go. Let us have done with you. Because quite frankly, you are putting these people in the face of death and injury by your actions.
Thank you very much indeed. Cecilia Shea, you're one of the people most affected by this. You have one of these passports, but you at the moment don't have the right to enter Britain. Why should you have that right?
Yes, because we are the Hong Kong people. Britain is the sovereign state, like the stepmother of the Hong Kong people. So we have the right to secure the resident after 1997.
Are you afraid what would happen to you if you didn't have that right?
Yes.
What do you think would happen?
I think I will leave Hong Kong if I find another way, if I don't have the right.
So where would you go?
Somewhere in the world, the free world.
Because there are some people who would say, well, perhaps the judgment of what's been going on in Beijing is too precipitate. Of course, it is a tragic event which has happened there. Nonetheless, even in the darkest days of Mao's time, he still left Hong Kong untouched, that it's the goose that lays the golden eggs, and some people say China will never touch it, whatever the circumstances. Mr. Lee, you've actually been in Beijing, haven't you? What happened to you there?
I was detained in Beijing for 3 days. And the reason for the detention is because I represent groups in Hong Kong to carry money to Beijing to support the student in Beijing. And I was interrogated and was asked to write a confession that I was wrong in contacting the student groups, the student leaders. And they always repeat one thing, is that if I explain clearly everything, then I can leave. And secondly, when you look at the TV in China and also the explanation from the people who interrogate me, is that the student movement now is counter-revolutionary rioter. And also they emphasize that they are overseas power in supporting the student.
And you fear that the same thing might happen in Hong Kong once it was handed over to China?
I think, when you look at the history of China, this is not the first time that a purge of the people in China. And I think all the people in Hong Kong is worried in the future that something similar will happen to them. And actually, I think the fear is very well grounded, because it's not just me who have been detained at this moment. I think there are other people of Hong Kong that are now being detained in China. And also, historically, lots of people who came to Hong Kong have been detained in the past history.
So, Trini Leung, you're a fellow trade unionist of Mr. Lee. Could you not look to some support from the British government?
Yes, actually, beginning the morning immediately after the massacre, for 2 days we tried desperately to call up the British Embassy in Beijing and asking for help and to send us safely back to Hong Kong. And when we first called up, then the question immediately put to us is, are you traveling on a British passport? And when I said no, then the British Embassy officials said, well, then I'm afraid we won't be able to help you, meaning that we're not quite considered as British. But then when we said, actually, some of our Hong Kong students might be in danger of arrest by the Chinese authorities. And then the official said, well, maybe you should have thought twice when you want to interfere with others' internal affairs.
This is something that people might feel in Britain, that however much they sympathize with you, you are basically Chinese. It's not Britain that has caused all this trouble for you, it's China. The solution lies with China, not with Britain.